We are excited to be here this afternoon. Welcome to our session entitled Discovering STEAM in the Library of Congress, Einstein Fellow Experiences. I'm Leanne Potter, the Director of Professional Learning and Outreach Initiatives at the Library of Congress, and I'd like to thank our Smithsonian Institution colleagues for welcoming our participation in the National Education Summit. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here and are looking forward to a fun conversation. I am a white middle-aged woman with graying blonde hair, wearing glasses, a black shirt, and a bluish blazer in front of one of my favorite features in my house, and that is my bookcase. I am delighted to be joined today by three colleagues who will introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Kelly Taylor. Kelly?
Well, it's good morning for me, but good afternoon.
That's right.
I am Dr. Kelly Taylor. I have blonde hair, blue eyes. I'm wearing glasses and a summery blue pattern top. I'm sitting in my summer mess as an educator in what used to be my daughter's bedroom. And I'm excited to be here. I teach third grade at Hawthorne Elementary in Boise, Idaho.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be joining with you today. I am Amara Alexander. I am an African-American woman. I have locks that are blonde and black. I am wearing glasses, some new green pairs of glasses, and I have on a bright yellow satin blouse, long sleeve. And I'm at my grandmother's house with wood paneling and a nice, I think it's a grandmother clock that's sitting behind me. I am a principal at Orchard Knott Middle School located in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Hello, my name is Jackie Katz. I am a white woman with braided brown hair and brown eyes, currently wearing a black and white dress as I chat with you from Lewis, Delaware, spending some time at the beach. I am a high school science teacher from Princeton, New Jersey, and I am really, really excited to have this conversation today.
The beach, Jackie, I have to say. All right, we can go ahead and throw up our next slide. We have an activity we're going to be asking everyone to participate in momentarily. Here we go. For those of you who are familiar with some of the strategies we use at the Library of Congress, we often start with a primary source document, and we invite participants to do a little observing, reflecting, or questioning. And some of you might be familiar with the same routine that is see, think, wonder. And we have a photograph that lives in the library's collections, and that's all I'm going to say about it at this point. And we'd like everybody watching to analyze the photograph for a minute or two, and then just start taking advantage of the chat. I am very happy to report that our colleague Celia Roskin is manning our chat for us, and she'll let us know for sure, what kinds of things are being shared. But we'd love for you to share with us what you see or what you observe in the image, what the photograph makes you think about or reflect upon, and what it makes you wonder or what questions it raises. And if you would go ahead and just take advantage of the chat and share with us your observations, your reflections, and your questions about the photograph in front of you. One of you loves the woman sitting cross-legged in the front row. Good observation. Looks like Warren G. Harding next to Einstein. Roughly 1920s fashion. Noticing that everyone is white, mostly men. Wondering what year it is. Happy to see women as well as men. These are great. noticing some diversity, noticing Albert Einstein is the center of attention, looks to be a happy occasion. Again, more men. I'm surprised to see adults in formal clothing seated casually on the ground. Oh, I like that. I wonder who these people were. Great. Yeah, 2 women, lots of men. Victorian era. Yeah, lots of good observations, all of you. These are great. Many people in front of a house. I wonder who these people are. Notice everyone is dressed nicely. Maybe they're celebrating or communicating something. These are all great. Now, if we were actually engaged in a great conversation about this photograph, I would be asking questions that I am sure Kelly and Jackie and Amara would be asking, and those would be things like, "Ooh, what makes you say that? Tell me more about that." And unfortunately, we don't have quite the opportunity, in this venue to do this. But what I love about what you have shared is that there is something about this photograph that caught your attention. And so I'm feeling yay. It caught our attention too. Now, the reason we decided to use it is because we wanted to kick off this session by letting you know that that we needed to connect our session, Albert Einstein Fellow session, to Albert Einstein in Libraries Collection, and really let you know that Albert Einstein does make his way into the Library of Congress in some interesting ways. One of the ways that Einstein has a connection to the library is through the collections. So here's one example. It's a photograph that was taken on April the 26th, 1921, for those of you who had to know. The people in the photograph include the Prince of Monaco, as well as Albert and Elsa Einstein. She, by the way, was serving as his translator on this particular occasion. There are members of the National Academy of Sciences greeting President Harding on the White House grounds. And they were there because the Einsteins were visiting the United States. The National Academy of Sciences was bestowing an award on him. And this particular photograph is one of about 40,000 images that are part of the Harris and Ewing collection. So they're all available on the library's website, images taken during that roughly same time period, the 1920s. And we chose it to show you one way that Albert Einstein has a connection to the library, but he also appears in other collections. And he has a very important programmatic connection. And that is that since 2018, the Library of Congress has been one of several agencies participating in the Albert Einstein Distinguished Educator Fellowship Program that is sponsored by the Department of Energy. And we can go ahead and advance our slide. And again, thank you all for playing along with that observation activity. Appreciate that. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, the Albert Einstein Distinguished Educator Fellowship Program is, as I mentioned, supported by the Department of Energy. And the Library of Congress is one of many agencies that has participated in the program. Other agencies that have participated include the Department of Defense, the U.S. Geological Survey, NASA, the Department of Homeland Security, the National Science Foundation, as well as various offices on Capitol Hill and the Smithsonian. What we got involved in the program, we can go ahead and advance the next slide. We got involved with the Einstein Fellow Program a number of years ago when it became very clear that teachers of the social sciences and of English language arts were quite familiar with the Library of Congress. But our colleagues in the sciences and in the math areas were a little less familiar with the library, and we needed to figure out some creative ways to sort of elevate the library's resources and programs to educators in different curricular areas. And we were familiar with the Einstein Fellow Program. We knew that it brought outstanding K-12 science teachers to Washington to work with different agencies. And we already had a very robust program for educators. We just wanted to tap into science and math a little bit more deliberately. So we worked with the Department of Energy and fortunately had the opportunity to establish a memorandum of understanding and become a participant. And they have a very rigorous program that gets some extraordinary educators interested in spending a year in Washington working with a federal agency. And our very first Einstein Fellow was Dr. Kelly Taylor, and she's on our panel today as well. And then Amara joined the next year. And in the middle, we had Peter DeCrane and Leslie Alexander, who, by the way, Peter's on a family vacation this week, I think. And Leslie, when we started planning this event, Leslie was on a research ship out in the middle of the Atlantic somewhere, I think. And we're excited because Jackie, who's been our Einstein Fellow up until last Friday, this past year, and we have a new Einstein Fellow joining us in about a month, who is an educator from Florida. But in the meantime, today's conversation is really intended to be an opportunity for all of you on the call to learn about the Library of Congress's resources that relate to science, that relate to math, and certainly relate to the arts as well. And Kelly and Jackie and Amara are gonna lead us. And I'm gonna start with my next question, and that is the next slide. And it's an easy one. It's so, three of you, why? Why did you decide to apply to be a part of the Albert Einstein Distinguished Educator Fellowship Program? And we can advance to the next slide, and Kelly, you can jump right in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a funny thing. I met someone that was leaving for the fellowship a few years prior to applying. And then we took our youngest child out to Virginia and flew into DC to drop her off at Hollins University down in Roanoke. And we were staying the night there before our flight left. And I was telling my husband, I said, there's this program where we can stay here for 11 months and work with, a federal agency. He goes, oh, that's interesting. So her senior year, we decided it was kind of a joint decision to apply. And we're lucky enough to get accepted into the program, and we're able to be near her during that time. So that was really a great thing, but I really had no clue what I was in store for, and I would never change my decision. It was fantastic, and I can't say enough what an opportunity it is to be immersed in something like this for 11 months, and it has spoiled me for all other professional development. So but yeah, it's just weird how things work out.
Do apply to be an Einstein Fellow?
For me, at the time, I learned about the Einstein Fellowship through a different organization, and I've been teaching science probably for about 3 years. And so I literally marked on my calendar the day to the month exact where you have to teach for at least 5 years in order to apply to the fellowship. And so when I got to finish that 5th year, I knew when those applications opened, I was going to apply. So for me, it really was that long-term goal setting. I was teaching 6th grade science. No, excuse me. I was teaching kindergarten through 5th grade STEM at another school in Chattanooga. And I was just ready for something different. I was ready to explore. I had always lived in the South, and the idea of being able to live in DC, like Kelly mentioned, for 11 months, that to me, that enticed me. I wanted to be able to experience a different culture, meet different people. And as Leanne knows, I just kind of got immersed in the DC culture and became a huge fan of what DC had to offer and being able to be exposed to the Library of Congress. So that's my story.
Yeah, I love it. Growth, opportunity. Jackie, how about you?
Yeah, I have to echo a lot of what Kelly and Amara have been saying. A few years back, a colleague of mine had dropped the link subtly in an email and said, maybe you want to apply to this. And like all the educators out there and on this call know, like, time to do an application? I was like, no, I'm not doing this. And as I read more about it, I was like, wait, this could be such a cool opportunity. I had been teaching science for 10 years and I was still loving it. I was finding new things, but I was always a little afraid to become, to ever feel like I was becoming stuck. And this just seemed like such a cool opportunity to open my eyes to so many things I had never considered as an educator. And that it would reinvigorate me to get back into the classroom and just be ready and raring to go. And I have to say it's been successful on all fronts. And I am very much so looking forward to September, even though it's a bittersweet ending as I, pack my stuff up and head out of DC later this week and over the weekend. But it's just been an incredible opportunity.
I want to prod you a little bit because for you, Jackie, you sort of knew when you applied that the Library of Congress was a possibility. Now, Jackie, your situation as a result was a little bit different. Kelly and Amara, I'm not sure, Kelly, when you applied, I don't think you even knew that the library was going to be an option. I mean, I think you were thinking, oh, it'll be the Department of Defense, it'll be energy, it'll be NASA, it'll be whatever. And I think we were your first interview.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I have to jump in because what happens is you apply, and then if you make it through that round, you find out who wants to interview you. So they get to see the applications, and the organizations do, and choose who they're interviewing. And so you might just get one interview. There were people that had 5, so I had 2, and I look at it and I'm the Library of Congress. What is this? And then, but when I read the description, my heart soared because it was totally what I was looking for. And when we interviewed, I bet Amara and Jackie, you have a similar story. I felt so at home in the interview that even though you were the first one, I was like, well, this is the one I want. And if I don't get the other one, it's okay. And, I wouldn't even take it. So it was just, but it did surprise me. I had never used the Library of Congress before participating in the fellowship.
I would agree and echo. I'm sorry. I would agree and echo with Kelly. I had no idea. And so you have these interviews that are set up for you, and your heart is leaning more toward what you really want. More like my background is STEM, so I really wanted that direct STEM connection. But when the interview with the Library of Congress, it was at ease. Did not expect what happened next. It really caught me off guard. It was a beautiful, I guess, blend to be able to get selected at the Library of Congress. But I didn't know. It was helpful being the second Einstein Fellow because Kelly left a great binder, a literary binder, so that it would give me some kind of insight as into what my year would be looking like.
Yeah. So Jackie, you knew that the library was an option. What was it?
Yeah, I did know the library was an option, but I'm not sure. I still kind of feel a little bit like Amara and Kelly. Like I didn't know exactly what to expect because I too taught in my chemistry or biology bubble for so long. I had never used these resources. Yeah. And then again, like the conversation we had during the interview, I got a teaching idea that I implemented later that school year. So I was like, but if this doesn't even happen, I got new instructional material. This was totally worth it in the end. So it's just been incredible. And I mean, I now have history teacher best friends, which I never thought I would have before. So like 2 thumbs up to the LOC.
Right. Excellent. Oh, I love it. I think the reality of what cross-curricular instruction can be is something that definitely grows out of working with primary source materials. But I'm going to keep us moving because we do have other slides and things to talk about. And my next question for you was, I asked each of you, to give me 3 adjectives that describe your year at the library. So I'm going to ask our tech person to advance to the slide with the 3 adjectives on them as a sort of reminder to you guys. And if you want to change your adjectives today, feel free. But what were 3, how would you describe your Einstein Fellow year at the Library of Congress in 3 adjectives? Kelly?
All right. I might add immersive now, but when I thought about that, I just, that's very powerful. But I chose amazing. Again, didn't know what to expect. I thought, well, if I get a free trip to DC for the interview, that's a win. But I feel a part of the Library of Congress still. I have ownership in those buildings. They're my buildings as we describe them around the house. And, we look for them whenever there's shots of DC. And so I really found a place, and it really was transformative. I participated, like many of us, in a variety of professional developments, and this is the top one. Again, it spoiled me for other professional developments. It changed me. It helped me. You feel so out of place in a way, outside of your classroom, in an office setting. And, I'd had other careers prior to teaching, but I had to do a lot of self-talk and really dive into, okay, why did they choose me? Why am I here? Focus on that. And so it really helped me kind of hone in on my strengths and what I bring to the table, and helped me take that beyond the Library of Congress into my current career as a continuing educator. And it really is, again, that once in a lifetime opportunity. And we try to get back to DC any chance we can. And when we connect with the Library of Congress staff each time, it's like we're right back there. We're a part of the family. So just a tremendous experience. And I love the library because we have such a beautiful setting, no politics, no, it was all just wonderful. So.
I chose from my experience challenge, growth, and opportunity. I was very comfortable where I was teaching in the classroom, and I knew I personally needed something more to push me to be a better educator. And so being at the Library of Congress, it was a challenge. I remember the first thing that I kind of said to one of the colleagues is, I'm not going to write because I don't like it. Well, the joke was on me. I ended up writing a lot of blogs and enjoyed that process. And it really motivated me to want to pursue my doctoral degree. And so I'm not Dr. Alexander yet, but definitely working on that. And that was birthed out of the Library of Congress. So it was a challenge to have to sit and write and do blogs, but I grew as a writer, and then it prompted me to do other things. It was an opportunity to experience something that I haven't experienced before. I talk about growing up in the South and being on the East Coast, being in DC was a very different culture that I was not used to. And so I had to really adapt to the culture of DC, but grew to love it. And so I needed that opportunity. And a lot of the fellows will talk about that access to be able to have professional development. And Kelly talked about how you just get spoiled. As a teacher, sometimes you get confined, and it's the PD that your district is giving you or what you're supposed to do. As an Einstein Fellow, it gives you the opportunity to say, hey, I really want to focus in on this thing or other things. And you have the opportunity to explore that. So those were my roles and the growth that I had from the experience. It propelled my career, and now I'm no longer in the classroom. I'm an administrator, and that would not have happened have I not had the experience as an Einstein Fellow at the Library of Congress.
Your administrator role when your teachers come to you talking about their professional development goals, do you think you have a different answer than you might have had you not done this?
I do. And I will say this year, yes is my answer. It's not no. And I think teachers are not used to that because I had access to professional development. So when you ask me, hey, can I go do this, Miss Alex? Yeah, really? Yeah, really. Like if that's the thing that you want to do that's going to grow you as a professional, I'm going to give you access to do that. So that's definitely, I think about that when teachers are asking me, it's because I got a yes. And I think teachers sometimes, well, oftentimes they need that yes, that validation in their profession to grow as leaders.
I agree. Excellent. How about you, Jackie? Adjectives, which will lead us beautifully into our next question too, by the way.
Awesome. Well, yes, I have felt a lot of the same things that Amara and Kelly chatted about. But I think this was an incredibly eye-opening experience. Like Amara had mentioned, like you get a little confined in your role, and you're in the day-to-day, and you're doing the work, and it's, you know, blink and it's been years, and then you find yourself in an experience like this. And I remember my very first like interaction with the library was before the fellowship started. I came to a PD session over the summer, and I sat around a table with librarians, art teachers, history teachers, and it was in that moment that I was like, oh my gosh, how have I never done this before? Like, I learned so much in those 3 days that I was like, well, I had to like mentally prepare myself. I was like, this is going to be drinking from a fire hose this whole year. I got to keep up. I got to just write down everything I can. And it is that beautiful interdisciplinary nature of the library that is one of the key take-home messages I will bring back to my school, and back to my educational philosophy and teaching practices. And it's an opportunity that I'm fairly confident in saying, like, I would not have gotten in any other capacity, right? If I just kept chugging along in my classroom, I don't know if I would ever think to go collaborate with the history teachers or the librarians or the art teachers. But now I'm on like a mission to make this happen. And it's this opportunity to explore when you're at the library, that you're able to find all these connections. And that's where my last adjective came from, which I guess is not a technical adjective, is why I probably don't teach English. But it was a little corny in that I was able to pursue topics I was interested in, and things I didn't even know I was interested in. Corn came up on my adventure all throughout my 11 months. And that's the picture you're seeing on the screen. It's a corn kernel that was imaged by Nina Fedoroff, a molecular biologist, geneticist, whose papers, both physical papers and digital papers, are part of the library's collections. So I was able to explore that and think about all the ways this connects to my biology content. So the thread of corn stayed throughout my entire journey, and I have definitely learned a lot, and my students are going to get sick of me talking about corn come September, but it'll be worth it.
Related to what you just shared, Jackie, and that is, so what in the library's collections really spoke to all of you? Kelly?
Well, I fell in love with so much. It was really tricky. Excuse me. But one of my favorite things was going down to the manuscript room and looking through documents that were original. I mean, it still today amazes me. And I plan to get back. I will be back to do some research. But Alexander Graham Bell, we know him for the telephone, and but he did so much more with aviation. And so I kind of got caught up in his work that maybe wasn't as successful, and kind of looking at inventors as people, because, we do a lot with students. I do a lot as an elementary teacher with engineering design process. And so looking at the innovations and inventors was a big piece. And he was not near as successful with his aviation attempts, but I like to bring in that innovation and invention piece. And on the screen, you can see an old icebox, which we've come a long ways, right? And then the Sanborn maps, it's a lot of, mapping the changes. You can see the changes in your own community. And then, of course, we've got an Alexander Graham Bell image there. And I still use that one to this day with paper circuits and talking about Morse code. But the young man you see in the picture, it's his first day of school. So on our first day of school, we'll often, do a primary source analysis looking at, different first days of school throughout history and talking about that. And then in Boise, Idaho, we have a large Basque population. So we bring in images of, this is a Basque family or Basque families, probably at a boarding house. And there's just, again, I had never used the Library of Congress before, and I can't stop. So, but there's something for everyone.
Those of you who are listening to our conversation, and I know many of you have some familiarity with the library, feel free to add into the chat the things that, have sparked your attention and interest within the library's collections, and I'll read off some of them as well. But next, let's move on to Amara. Amara, what are the materials that spoke to you?
I think the charge that you gave me when I first arrived was go explore. And the Library of Congress is so vast, and it's like, well, where do I go? What reader room do I get into? Like, how do I find things? And so I kind of got into, not to say a rabbit hole, but being from Alabama, I was looking at some digital catalogs, and I really got into the Tuskegee Airmen. And so that collection just really spoke to me. Growing up, learning about the story of the Tuskegee Airmen, and then finding the photographs of the Tuskegee Airmen, and then figuring out who the photographer was, Tony Frizzell, who was a fashion magazine photographer, and just happened to forget the location of where the images were, but just happened to capture the images of the Tuskegee Airmen. And think I'm correct, but hers are the only images that we still have and are really clear of the Tuskegee Airmen. So that was one thing that I kind of got into. And while I was there at the Library of Congress, I really wanted to highlight the voices of African Americans in the STEM profession. And that was tricky to kind of figure out, because it wasn't like a Google search like, hey, African American STEM inventors or African American professionals. That just didn't happen. And so I had to really use keywords to find some things. And so the image on the left is of Charles S. Baker, who was an inventor. He actually patented the friction heater. And so I ran across this image, and it just really spoke to me. The students at my school are predominantly African American, and so I knew when I showed this image of African Americans in STEM, that would help to spark them, being able to see themselves in that STEM profession. And so we kind of I found that primary source, and I use that now even when I go back into the classroom and teach. And yes, although I'm an administrator, I do find ways to sneak in the classroom, as I did when I was at the Library of Congress. But to engage the audience that's here, there is an image to your left. I think that's what it is, to your left. There's a recipe. I'm going to give you a hint, and so hopefully people in the chat can kind of maybe figure it out. But whose recipe do you think it is, and what is the recipe of? The hint is civil rights, and that may be too much, but I know we're a bit time restricted. So in the chat, what is the recipe of, and whose recipe do you think it might be? Hopefully the chat, we can get some responses. I don't know, do we have any? Can you see, Leanne?
Oh, we do now. Nadia says pancakes.
Okay.
And Jacqueline suggests biscuits and Rosa Parks.
Okay, anyone else? I showed this to my grandmother today. She was quite intrigued by it.
I bet she was. I think you should make her breakfast tomorrow. Yes, and Bella says it's pancakes.
Yes. So it seems like the consensus, there are pancakes. They are pancakes. And,
somebody says peanut butter cookies.
Oh, that would be, and if you notice, it does have peanut butter, and I thought that's the interesting thing about this recipe. They do have peanut butter in them, and I've tried them, they're good. Like
They're really good. They're
this is
really
not
good.
is it chef's kiss? This is a chef's kiss type of recipe. But you are correct, Jacqueline, that you suggested it is Rosa Parks. So somebody said George Washington Carver, Freedom, Dr. King. Okay, but they are Rosa Parks recipes, and I kind of found this recipe and just fell in love with it. Once again, that Alabama connection for me. At the time, the Library of Congress did a exhibit on Rosa Parks well, before the pandemic hit. And so it was a very wonderful and beautiful exhibition on Rosa Parks. And so this was her, well, this is her recipe. And oddly enough, in a lot of her things, she wrote on just the backs of envelopes, on the backs of papers. And if we were able to zoom this in a little bit bigger, you could see that it is on the back of an envelope. And so these are the two that really spoke to me, being able to highlight African-American stories that are found in the Library of Congress to a broader audience. So
Your corn kernel, what spoke to you?
Yeah, of course. Well, the corn kernel really kind of propelled the rest of my journey, because I then went on a mission to think about corn and everything it has contributed to scientific knowledge, as well as to the development of human civilization on its own. So I really kind of went in to learn more about the key players in understanding the role of corn in our human history. And it introduced me to new scientific characters that I had never met before. And that's this center picture. In this picture is a gentleman named Luther Burbank, which is a name you might not have heard before, but he is conversing with two pretty well-known dudes over there, Thomas Edison and Henry Ford. And I thought it was just so cool to see these very different humans, meaning the fields they worked in were quite different, but they still found opportunities to come together and collaborate. And I feel like a lot of the collections at the library, again, continue to highlight this idea of interdisciplinary thinking. And we see it happening in that photo. So that's why I kind of love that photo. And I loved learning more about Luther Burbank and his very bizarre approach to hybridization of plants. And his collection in the manuscript division is full of random pieces of paper that he traced fruit on. Like, you see the fruit juice on the paper because he was tracing the pears and the peaches and the plums that he was cross-pollinating to create these new varieties. So just like a cool new scientific story to tell my students and to learn about myself. Along with that, I also was really interested in the idea of primary sources as launching phenomena in the science classroom. And many of the science teachers out there might be very familiar with this idea of introducing students to something that makes them wonder, that prompts questioning, and using that as a springboard for whatever content or skill you're looking to highlight in the classroom. So I really found two collections that really helped me identify phenomena. One was the Sanborn maps, which Kelly had mentioned earlier, and I think it's just such a cool thing to look at your town from 1885 and be like, why on earth was this, coal shed on the lot that the high school now sits on, and what does that mean for the land in 2023? So I just thought there were so many questions students could ask when looking at Sanborn maps. And I also totally fell in love with historic digitized newspapers, especially food advertisements from those newspapers, and thinking about like how we sell products today compared to how they sold products in 1911, and hearing about the quote unquote scientific data that they presented in these advertisements. Like, we spoke to 20 college students, all of which ate oatmeal this morning, so you should eat oatmeal too. It's just kind of a very interesting approach, and I'm very curious to see what conversations my students have when they take a look at things like this Quaker Oats ad that is up on the screen as well. So just so many cool things. It's hard to narrow down your favorites.
Eyes. And in response to my question a minute ago to our audience about collections that have spoken to them, Karen mentions that archives from the 1876 U.S. Centennial Exposition, the first World's Fair held in the United States, have piqued her interest. And Jacqueline asked a question, wondering if this fellowship is only for science-based content educators, or whether she could consider applying. She's in English journalism, a secondary English journalism teacher. And for the, just FYI, for the Einstein Fellowship, any teacher in any of the STEM fields is eligible, as you all mentioned, after 5 years in the classroom. However, Jacqueline, you'll be happy to know, we also have another similar opportunity at the library, and it's our Teacher in Residence program. And on the library's teachers page at loc.gov/teachers, you can find out about our Teacher in Residence opportunity. We usually open up applications for that opportunity in January. So 2 good opportunities. And I also understand that my colleague Beth from the Department of Energy is watching, and she signed on to give an answer as well, which I love. I love that. Okay, so you guys found all this great stuff. You were inspired by maps and by photographs and by advertisements and by recipes. And what did you do with all of it? Kelly? It wasn't just about you guys, by the way.
Yeah.
The point of the fellowship, it's a wonderful professional development opportunity, but it's expansive. So what did you do, Kelly?
It is expansive, and keeping your thoughts and materials organized was a challenge for sure. So luckily, one of the partners with the Library of Congress has the Teaching with Primary Sources Network. I still use that to this day to organize my primary sources. But as Amara mentioned, there's some writing involved. There's blog posts and NSTA right to the source. I had a great time creating hands-on activities also for patrons of the library to use. So that was right up my alley because I was a little bit like Amara. You know, the blog posts, I was nervous, but it does get a little competitive with those blog posts sometimes. How many did you write? So, but no, it's creating resources, not just for yourself, but obviously for other educators to find the STEM in the Library of Congress.
I would echo what Kelly said. I mean, there is some writing, so the blogs. I think it was a great accomplishment to be able to say that I published an article in the NSTA article. That was wonderful to be able to do that as well. I kind of needed to get out in the classroom. Being in the Library of Congress, that was a great opportunity. It was wonderful to be able to explore the reading rooms, but I also had an opportunity to go teach at some local schools in the DMV area, teaching with primary sources. And so in addition to the writing and presenting with the Library of Congress, I had the opportunity to go into local schools. And that to me helped to fill my teacher bucket to be able to do that with students.
Jackie, how about you?
Yeah, again, lots of writing, which was excellent and such a great learning experience for me, but also so many opportunities to present to colleagues and fellow educators. We got to do PD days for our fellow Einstein Fellows, which was so cool. And I was just so happy to share the work I was able to do at the LOC with my cohort of other Einstein Fellows. And they were such a great learning resource for me throughout the entire journey. So this was like a cool way for me to share with them. I was able to go back home and share with my colleagues in New Jersey and kind of give them a taste of what I was doing, and hopefully also let them see my face and be like, don't forget me, I'm coming back. So that was fun. And then like webinars and workshops at conferences, it was so great to take the things I was discovering and noodling with to bring into the STEM classroom and workshop them with other educators from all over the place. And I feel like it just helped further my thinking and what I was able to produce while at the fellowship. So lots of great opportunities to share while an Einstein Fellow at the LOC.
Slide of our teachers page on the library's website. I've mentioned it once before at loc.gov/teachers. You will find much of the work that Kelly and Amara and Jackie and Leslie and Peter and other teachers who have worked with us, resources from the library, opportunities to engage with the library, information about opportunities like this are all available. And on the far left-hand side of that page, where it gives you a link to the blog, the Teaching with the Library of Congress blog. That is something that everybody on the call can certainly subscribe to. And once you're in our blog, if you just search on Einstein Fellow, you will find all of the blog posts that all of our former Einstein Fellows have written. And we love all of them. And there's some terrific series of topics. I know earlier Jackie mentioned her interest in phenomenon. You will certainly find that series in the blog posts as well. I'm looking at time and I'm realizing we've got about 5 minutes or so to go. And I want to make sure that everybody who is watching has an opportunity to ask questions. So if you have a question, feel free to use the chat function and put your question in, and I will continue to glance over and make sure I don't miss anything. I do see that we had one a little bit earlier. Kim had, this was when you guys were talking about what you were able to accomplish during the year. And she said that she appreciated the that you talked about goals, achieving goals, but wondered if you were missing any of your EDC scholars, I think is what it says, but I'm not sure what the acronym is.
You mean your students?
Maybe that's what it's asking. Maybe that's what the question was. I'm sorry. It says accomplishing goal 11. Do you miss your ECE scholars? Does that ring a bell? Okay, let's ask that. Did you miss your kids? Did you miss your students?
I would say I miss the sense of being in the classroom with kids.
Yeah.
My classroom back at my home school was by the restroom. And so in elementary kids, it's always some activity around the restroom. And so I did miss the noisiness of kids and that buzzing of kids. I did miss that. And so that's why I intentionally made effort to get back into some classrooms in DC. So I did. You missed them.
That's good, of course. Especially the little ones that give hugs.
Well, and I definitely missed the students too. And I'm kind of noisy, so I don't mind a noisier classroom. And I definitely had to adapt to the office setting. So do not use the teacher voice, but it's just, and I really valued, Jackie mentioned kind of workshopping ideas and lessons with other educators. And I was able to do that some in the library itself with the hands-on activities. And I am just not a curriculum writer that can do it without working it out with students or, other educators. So that was very valuable.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I don't even have the super cute ones that like to give hugs, right? I teach the high school kids, and hopefully they're not on here because don't tell them. I did miss them. And I think just the day-to-day interaction, and you never know what you're walking into. You kind of get used to that, low level of chaos, which was definitely an adjustment coming into the more office space. But like Kelly just mentioned, the colleagues in the office were so incredible to learn from and work with, that it helped having those relationships, even though there weren't necessarily as many student relationships this year.
Last question that I had for you guys was about whether there were any surprising or sort of aha moments for each of you when you were at the library. And you all had great answers to this. We can put that slide up because there's an image or two on it that's kind of interesting. So Jackie, you want to start since your photograph, I think, is the first one on that slide?
Sure. So talk about unexpected. right? You walk into the basement of one of the library's buildings, and there's a very sophisticated optics lab, because the Preservation Research Division needs to understand the artifacts that exist and ways to make sure they exist 10, 20, 30 years from now. So I was so kind of eye-opened to find a cohort of scientists employed by the Library of Congress working at that interface between the humanities and technology. And it was just such a cool thing to explore. And that's what that green image is. It's us down in that lab as they use ultraviolet light to observe one of the artifacts more closely and see the things you can't see with your eyes, which is really cool.
I would say for me, the Library of Congress is a beautiful place. The buildings and the tunnels. I mean, it is just a beautiful building. So if you have the opportunity to come to DC, please go and check out the Library of Congress. With figuring out the library and where do you go for here and there, I had the opportunity to meet Miss Connie Carter, who is I want to say relic. She is the Library of Congress, and I had the opportunity to go on a tour with her and the tour of a book, just to be able to walk with Miss Connie and see the backstory of the Library of Congress. That was just a phenomenal experience for me that I'll never forget. And also the story of a book. There's a lot of books that go to the Library of Congress. Every book goes to the Library of Congress. Some get to the shelves of the Library of Congress, some go down to this warehouse area, and then some get shipped off to the other places across the United States. And so that to me was the aha. And then my picture is the one of the masks. So I had a beautiful 6-month experience as an Einstein Fellow. And then we all had this thing called a global pandemic. It kind of put a pause on what happened, but I will say I enjoyed the in-person 6 months that I had and would not take anything back. I mean, it really was a phenomenal experience. Kelly?
Well, I'll keep this quick. So my image, I have two there. One is in the Library of Congress there with Connie Carter, a staple, retired staple. But, I think the community, again, I felt a part of the Library of Congress. I felt a part of my cohort, and we all still keep in touch. So that was a huge aha, the multiple levels of collegial interaction was really amazing. And then the other images of the fountain I walked past every time I went to the library and looking at historical photos from there. I just loved my walk in. And I really think with images and things like that, there is something for everyone and everyone can access. And that's what I love, that at the elementary level, I can put up an image. And no matter what, I have students that can contribute. So, it's a great thing, and there's something for everyone. And that's all I'll share.
I love all of it. So we do have two questions. One's for Jackie. Christina says, I'm so glad that you are open to interdisciplinary curriculum. Do you use art drawings of plants from the 19th century in your classroom?
I will now. I found so many while at the library this past year, and they're beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to show them to my students who say, I really need to draw that, and be like, look at this, look at the details.
Right.
So,
oh, I love it. And this last one, and it really is the last one because we need to wrap up. Debbie Smith is wondering, how does the public access collections in person at the library? If you go to loc.gov, and you see the little, right underneath the big banner, if you click on researchers, you can find out everything you need to know. You can sign up for a reader's card and visit any of the reading rooms across the library. But do keep in mind that there are literally millions of objects in the library's collection available on the library's website through the search. Jackie and Amara and Kelly, I cannot thank you enough for participating in our conversation today. I hope that this conversation has piqued the interest of some of our audience members and that they are inspired to explore the library's website a little bit and perhaps explore the possibility of applying to a fellowship opportunity at the library or perhaps to another federal agency and looking into the Einstein Fellow Program. We are fans of the program. We are certainly fans of the three of you and really eager to reach more science and math and engineering and art and every educator, because we believe so strongly that primary sources can play a powerful role across the curriculum. Thank you again to our colleagues at the Smithsonian for welcoming this session as part of the Education Summit. We love being your colleagues, and thanks to all of you. And again, that slide had our contact information. Feel free to reach out to us. We welcome hearing from you. And again, thanks you three, you're awesome.